Hey there. Welcome to Cambridge Inside Out.
Hi,
And I'm Robert Winters,
Judy Nathans.
and today is July 31st,
Last day of July of
2018.
2018.
Yeah, and also the day after the one
Summer
and
meeting.
only
Yeah,
meeting of the Cambridge City Council for the
Right.
summer.
Right.
And as
And
we,
and there won't be another one really for quite a while, unless
until
it's
about
because
mid-September.
September 17th because of Jewish holidays and
Yeah.
Labor Day and
Yeah.
all that stuff.
Yeah, and it was, and actually I thought I'd bring the
Oh my
visual
God.
here. It's
Truly is 1,001 pages.
Yeah, 1,001 pages, the meeting materials, right? So every city council had a little book, a big special binder that had this big stack in there.
I think because there were a lot of committee reports that had stacked up and that they all had attachments
Yeah,
and stuff, so
yeah.
that's part
So,
of it.
yeah, the truth is, I've been at summer meetings where the number of resolutions was well in excess of 100
Resolutions?
resolutions, and there have been orders that were 40, 50
Because
orders.
they wanted to get everything in.
Well, what happens is because there's no intervening meetings
Right.
since sometimes
So
mid-June
it's all like pent up
until
actions.
yeah. So people wrote an order and they go, well, we'll just put it on the agenda for the midsummer meeting, and
There
then
should be a limit on
another
that
week
stuff.
pass, another week pass, another
Wow.
week pass, and so you end up with a big stack of orders and resolutions,
Yeah.
and in this case here, committee reports and other matters as well. So it's not unusual that you would have a lot
And
of
there were a lot
items
of
of
awaiting
business.
reports that came back from the city manager.
That's
So they had
right.
a chance- so that added to all.
Yeah,
to it,
yeah. But the thing is, in truth, though, the total number of city council orders and resolutions weren't that many. I
No,
think
the
it was
probably
about
was what,
30
what-
resolutions,
And what,
17
19,
orders,
17
something like
orders?
that.
Yeah.
Right? It's not that many. The manager's agenda, could have been 50 items. It was about 30. No, it was about 23, I think.
That's all, yeah.
So it wasn't that many, but there were a couple of big juicy items,
Like
to
yeah.
be sure.
Yeah, the ones
And
that they
as you
discussed.
correctly pointed out, there were, I think, 7 committee reports. And it's
Mm-hmm.
become the practice. I kind of almost wish that they wouldn't include them, but when you go to a meeting,
Yeah.
there's some supplemental materials that are there, and a report or whatever, and they just print up the whole thing. If there's a PowerPoint
Right.
presentation,
But it's
they
also the
print it.
minutes, though, of the meetings, which is
The minutes
important
good,
because a
yeah.
lot of them are not televised.
Right.
So
The
you
minutes,
don't know what happens.
the minutes of the meetings,
Yeah.
I post complete every single time. It's just that all the attachments I don't include.
You're talking about the minutes of of which
Yeah.
meetings? The committee reports?
yeah,
but
yes.
they don't always come out timely enough.
Right. So
you know.
on Civic Journal, actually, I have like a little PDF version of I used to call it my compact guide to city council meeting.
Yeah.
It's actually, I put it together for myself, but there used to be at least a few department heads who said, yeah, I'd print this one out, I'd use this
So is
because
this
it
the
was
minutes
better.
of the council meetings or of committee
Well,
meetings?
these are
or
just sort of
both?
all the agenda items, but the
Oh,
thing
okay,
is
yeah.
that in the HTML version that I have online,
Yeah.
I include all of the
Right.
text of the committee
Right.
reports.
Right.
Didn't always do that, but I've been doing that for, I don't know,
Well,
8 years
I
or
enjoy
something.
it because if I can't be at the meeting,
Well,
and
I
it's
put
not
it in.
televised.
I put it in there just to make it searchable, and
Oh.
sometimes there have been actually the documents would just be included just as scans, and it wasn't
Right.
searchable text. And if 20 years later you want to actually find
Yours
something,
is searchable the way you do it?
yes, it's everything
Wow.
searchable. So you can Google things on
Wait,
my
on
site.
your site it's searchable?
Everything. There's even
Wow.
a search window in there. You can search for anything, and people use it all the time.
Wow.
You know, it's like
I didn't realize that. Wow.
For example, I haven't responded, and if you're watching, I'm
Uh-oh.
sorry, but
Who is this?
there was one agenda item had to do with this sort of a problematic situation up at Sherman Street,
Oh,
where
with
the
the
railroad,
horn. Yeah.
the commuter rail goes
the
through and
train
it blasts the
sound.
horn,
Yeah.
and it didn't always blast the horn like that.
They let it go because it was,
I
forget
think
the reason.
I think it was supposed to be. They were supposed to be blasting the horn according to federal guidelines,
Right.
but then they didn't for a long time, and then
Like 10 years.
they finally got around and said, well, we're required to do
There's a certain
this.
speed limit they had to post.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So they started blasting the horn. I tell you, I was at the jazz festival on Sunday, which was a great thing to
Yeah,
talk
it was
about
only
anyway.
briefly, yeah.
But then when you could hear the train coming because it's just down the way, you could hear the train broadcasting all across Danby Park, and it is loud.
The horn, because I've
the
heard
horn.
the trains. Is the
Oh
horn
yeah,
different?
you'd hear the horn, but then they lean on the horn, and there's a huge, loud horn comes right across. It
So
sort
that
of
would not
blended
be-
in with the jazz music.
It wouldn't be too
in a way.
pleasant
If you were right
in the middle
next
of
to
the-
it,
No,
yeah.
if it's not, the complaint is it's at 3 in the morning and at 6 in the morning or something like that.
Yeah, because the thing, sometimes the commuter rails don't really run trains during weekends, but this one, there are actually trains do run.
Yeah.
Not as frequently on the weekends, but they do run.
yeah.
So anyway, just mentioned about the site, it being searchable, is that, so I get emails, and this is actually a routine. Somebody says, well, I heard somewhere that the council had a discussion about this in 2005.
Oh,
The city didn't seem to have any materials about it. Do you? And sometimes the answer I have is, yeah, I have
but
it.
how do you, you mean everything you,
Well, the thing is that before they put everything online,
yeah.
the city clerk would have everything on record. They still have everything on
I
record.
know,
going
but it's
back-
very hard to search. You can't search.
You can't, no.
No.
But the thing is that you could ask the city clerk to dig something out, and if you're nice, she'll do it. So you can get pretty much anything
Yeah.
that was ever done,
Yeah,
right?
but it's not, you can't do it, well, you can, but you have to go through a lot of stuff.
If you search,
I did try
not,
to do that.
not to be too critical here
Yeah.
of the city website, but they do have a search function on the city website, and if you search for something, which is reasonably narrow focus, it will give you
A lot of
5,000
Right,
hits
right.
in no particularly perfect order,
Right,
and then you could spend the weekend just trying to
I
find
know,
something.
that happened to me.
So it's not a very good search function at
Yeah,
all.
no,
At least I've never found it to be a very good
I
search
agree.
function. I actually, and this is true actually for a lot of websites, including the city websites, and actually some academic websites like MIT website and Harvard websites. Sometimes if there's a search function, best thing to do is leave the site, go back to Google and Google it, and it'll find it quicker
There we
from
go.
outside than if you try and do it inside within
Interesting.
their own search
Yeah.
function. And that's
Okay.
sort of embarrassing, but
Yeah.
it's the way it is.
I'll have to experiment on your
Right.
site. I didn't
Well, on
know
mine,
that.
it's,
Yeah.
it's actually it's
Do you have,
hardwired
like, a
into Google.
search box
It's a
or
Google
something?
search.
It's a Google search.
right within the site. So
Ah.
you can do website domain specific searches in Google. You just have to go site : and then put the domain
But
name.
how, goes beyond this.
And mine does that automatically.
But how do you, when you put these things in, how does it become searchable? Just the way you have put it in, coded it in or something?
When you
or-
put something in as an HTML document,
Oh, HTML,
right.
okay.
and nowadays actually even a PDF document,
gonna
as long
say,
as
yeah.
long as it's savable text as opposed to a scan.
Yeah,
The thing is that there are these spiders.
that are there.
No, they're spiders like Google, Bing, all these other very major search
They're not
engines.
bots, they're spiders.
They are bots,
They're
but they call them
bots, okay.
spiders because what they do is they drop into your site and then they follow a link to another document and then they follow every link they can
It
find
does
in
it
there.
automatically.
And they do it automatically. I will tell you when Microsoft Bing, if it's a time when they're spidering your site, which they do pretty frequently, they'll use up all the resources of your site because it's so extensive. All right, so you actually sometimes
How
have
do you
to
know that?
because you can check web statistics, and I've done that
Wow.
because there was some performance problems a few years ago, and I checked it out, and it turns out it was Microsoft. It was the one. It was, I thought it was like a
Oh my
denial of service
gosh.
attack from some kid
This is
in
all
Russia.
making me very nervous because actually everything, because you don't
But
encrypt your site.
No, but the thing is, the thing is that to have the capability to have something like Google just find everything in the
Yeah.
universe means that they have to be able to do this.
Well, yeah.
So just by default, any standard HTML document, you can actually say no robots. You can block them,
You can?
Yeah, you can do that. But they don't all respect the instructions because it's really more in
Yeah.
the nature of a request
Sure.
to not do that.
You're not hiding anything. It's
I'm not
information
hiding-
that you
yeah,
want
no,
people
I want
to have
everybody
it.
to find my stuff. The reason I keep it up there, kind of like as a gigantic archive, is so people can find stuff.
Is it Google or Microsoft that's trying to digitize everything written? The
Google
Library of
certainly,
Congress or
yeah.
something?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think Google. Yeah,
Whoa,
they're doing Google
okay.
Books.
Between
you know.
Google and Amazon.
Yeah,
Facebook,
yeah.
But
yeah.
Google and Amazon, it's our lives.
Right.
All right, so let's get back to, okay, so how did we get off on this tangent? Oh, because
I
of
don't
the agenda, somebody asking about,
Well, maybe it was
why it
yes.
was so big and
Yeah, yeah.
attachments and all that, and that you could search.
That's
Okay.
right.
So basically,
There's one page for every Arabian Night.
so what was some big takeaways from last night. It was basically the petition
Yeah, I mean,
and the process,
yeah,
right?
there were some sort of major items, to be sure, that were on this agenda, right?
Yes.
But I'd have to say the biggest one was I've been calling it the Nakagawa-Brown petition.
Nakagawa-Brown petition.
Yeah.
Well,
And
that's
I-
what it
and-
is.
Well, they call it the Brown petition because he was the first signer.
Oh, okay.
But because there was so much focus was on flooding in Alewife,
Right.
and that was Mike Nakagawa's big thing for years, long before it got all political.
Oh,
He was a sincerely interested
was-
person about
okay.
overland flooding and building in the floodplain. You know?
Yeah.
So so by my choice, I wanted to put his name
Yeah.
up the top line
Okay.
there because I thought that's kind of the sincere starting point. But in my view, the Nakagawa-Brown petition was sort of a cobbled together version of good intentions of somebody like Mike Nakagawa. I wasn't there at the drafting, so this is pure speculation,
Sure,
of course. And then the sort of what I would characterize as kind of a Fresh Pond Residents Alliance type of ethos about stop the development. We don't like traffic on Fresh Pond Parkway, right? So they sort of pulled this all together. Remember, we've talked about it before. There was originally going to be this petition. It was supposed to be filed in early April called the Pause petition that was all about putting a moratorium on development. And then
But basically around that area or any floodplain
Yeah.
area.
But the pause petition
Yeah.
got hammered even before it got
Yeah.
filed, so it never got filed. And then a week or so later, Nakagawa-Brown
This
petition
came out,
comes in.
okay.
So,
Which
you know,
affects the whole city. Which
yeah.
is,
So I thought
the
that was
difference, yeah.
that I think was the fatal flaw
That it
in their
tried to
strategy.
encompass
Well,
old buildings, new, everything, right?
yeah. So Nakagawa-Brown was all about. They call it what some people were calling it the climate safety petition, but
Or
let's
the
that's
green factors
yeah,
part of
yeah.
it. I don't know. All
This is like sales pitch, though, right?
yeah.
So, and they were trying to say like, well, we're doing this because we have to protect future generations, and and if
500-year flood.
right, so if you build things here like so, then one day people are going to be somehow unsafe or whatever, and from the get-go, I thought, well, you can't really get the financing to build, if anything, really,
Yeah.
if the bank or the financiers feel that the project is going to be laid waste 5 years later, or 10 years later, 15 years later.
So therefore, there's already something.
I think, and actually, I've heard the city engineers and even John Baldock from the climate
Right.
preparedness
Yeah.
people of the city say, if these major effects of overland flooding or storm surges or whatever come to pass, and I imagine many of them will,
Yeah.
that's not happening tomorrow, and the lifetime of some buildings is not meant to be, or they don't anticipate them to be 200-year buildings. So yeah, is it possible that 50 years from now there'll be a building that has the seashore lapping at the front door?
Well,
It could happen.
But some of those new buildings, have they been built with any of the new
Actually,
guidelines? That's what I'm
That's
confused by.
actually, that was part of the discussion last night.
Yeah.
The truth is that the planning board and the community development staff, to whatever degree you need to get a special permit, and almost all these projects need that, you have to meet a lot of strict guidelines. And Owen O'Riordan from the Public Works Department and Kathy Watkins, city engineer, they're going to say, well, where's your compensatory flood storage? Is the building of this building going to make flood conditions better than they were before you built the building? That's the standard they maintain. So the notion that somehow the city is doing nothing, which is what some people
Or
were
not fast
suggesting.
enough.
Or not fast enough.
That seemed to be the message, is it's not urgent enough, and
Right, but then
I don't know. I guess I'm just
well, they
a
come
moderate.
in. They come in
I
with
don't know.
with a petition that
Yeah.
where their standards are based on 500-year floodplains,
Yeah.
which basically put me on the map, which is I had never seen that done before.
I'd be gone
So,
probably. I'm right off
you
the
know,
Charles River.
so I think
Yeah.
even the people who really know about this, with the climate preparedness people, thought that was a bit of an overreach. I don't know if they said that explicitly, but I think that was the sense. And the planning board absolutely thought it was an
would
overreach.
impact too many buildings. I mean, there's some really good ideas in it, and I think that's.
So yeah,
If nothing else, it's inform people of what is possible or what we should be doing, and maybe to put a little more of an urgency under things, but not to. It's like it seemed to be saying the city isn't doing enough. I wouldn't say it's doing nothing.
But I would actually
Yeah.
make the point that there are some people who are choosing to be so zealous about this that no matter what you came back with, and no
Yeah.
matter what the city would say, they'd be saying it's not enough. So you
Well,
would never be able to satisfy them.
Yeah,
So-
it's like we have to be extreme in order to get anything
Yeah.
done.
So-
It seems to be the politics of the day.
Let's first say what actually
Yeah.
happened last night. Okay, so
Boy,
so the
let
thing
me
is
say it,
is
'cause I was watching
it's
it,
a little
and boy, it was
confusing.
confusing.
all right. So this petition I think arrived. Was it in April or May or something
I
like
don't
that, right? Okay, and it had one pass at the planning board, which only makes recommendations. There's nothing the planning board says as far as zoning recommendations are binding, right? Special
Okay.
permit's another thing, but zoning recommendations, just recommendations, right? And they got almost unanimous disapproval, and in fact, the planning board report was part of this agenda,
Right.
okay? You know,
It was agenda item 21. That's what
Right.
a lot of people are.
right, so that's the planning board report, but in addition, the city council's ordinance committee had also had one hearing
A
on this.
very long meeting. I watched that.
Right,
Five
and-
and a half hours.
And so the matter is still in committee technically, but the thing is the ordinance committee report came back, you know, with a report on what's going on. Now, what that meant, no, and in the, at both the
Wait,
planning board and
Yeah,
the
what was the
ordinance.
BZA part of it? I didn't get that. Wasn't there a rule about the
Um,
BZA said they couldn't rule on anything because there was no action taken yet?
That's has to do specifically
Oh.
with the Millers
Oh,
Rivers
the Millers, right,
Apartments,
okay, that's,
right?
you can
So,
bring that up. Yeah.
so, you know, though I think it was a little too overly focused on this one project, the Millers Rivers
Right.
renovations, which is
Yeah.
the Cambridge Housing Authority building that is long past overdue for
Right.
renovations.
And they were afraid their financing and whatever would be jeopardized
That's
by
right.
this petition.
Right, because as they say, when you go
Even
get
if
a
it's in
building permit
process,
and
yeah.
there's a zoning, petition pending, you get a little asterisk on your, you know, saying you proceed at your own risk.
At risk. Right.
And then the banks, the financiers, they see that and they go, oh, this is at risk?
No,
well,
no, thank you.
Right, they say no, thank you, and it's that
Yeah.
simple. In fact,
Yeah.
I would make the case that some of the banks, some of the financiers, it's not even a matter of choice. It's a matter of law in
Legality,
some
yeah.
cases where they're not permitted legally to put the bank
Right,
or the
at risk
pension
for something that
funds
might
money at
default or
risk.
whatever, yeah.
All right, any more than a bank can give you a mortgage today
Mm-hmm.
if you don't meet certain rigid criteria to qualify.
Mm.
Right? There was a time you could, but not today.
Mm.
Right? So anyway, so the city council had a range of things that they could have done. Right? One thing they could have done is just said, the hell with it. We'll just keep it in committee and we'll see you later. Right? They could have.
Well, keeping it in committee would just have it just expire on its own.
I think that because unless you were to schedule another city council meeting between
special
now and
meeting.
mid-September, then in fact the ability to act on it, because you have to pass to a
Pat.
second reading,
Right, from the
and then
ordinance
it's got to be
committee.
advertised, and you got to
Right.
do all of this before
So
the
all
deadline.
that would, and it
And-
was gonna
right.
expire on the 25th or the
Right, so-
7th, yeah.
Yeah, so the only way this could have actually proceeded is they would have had to have passed it to a second reading.
They would have to vote in favor of
Or-
passing it to a second reading.
Right, so the thing is that then it would, but then, you know, and then it would go to, would still, you could keep it in committee or you could not keep it in committee.
Right.
But, you know, when you pass to a second reading, it goes on unfinished business and then it's in the queue for possible ordination. Now, the petitioners, all of the city councils all said, well, we're not gonna be passing it this round anyway. So in a lot of,
Even the
think-
petitioner said that?
yeah, actually, there's one thing it said, one of the petitioners said that I actually found kind of repulsive. He said, well, we never intended the petition to pass as written.
Oh,
And
right, they have
and
all
I-
these amendments
and I
that
go-
they were gonna,
I
yeah,
go,
yeah,
hold on a minute.
yeah.
So you writing a petition, which is a pretty serious business, and you're
Yeah.
throwing it into the hands of the city councilors and the
To
ordinance
vote on,
committee,
right.
basically,
planning board,
you're
everybody.
treating it like it's a
Yeah.
damn labor negotiation. Like,
Hmm.
we're gonna come in real hardball here, and then we're gonna sort of come. No, that's not how it's supposed to work.
Well, I thought it just meant they were amenable to putting amendments in which they came up with, or something.
Which,
I don't know.
that's fine, if you're open to amendment,
Well, that's what I
because,
thought they were saying.
no, they actually said this was never intended
Oh, okay.
to pass as filed. Now that's ridiculous. to me, you file what you want passed. And then if there's pushback, you go, okay, what doesn't work, right?
But in between the ordinance committee meeting and yesterday, they did revise some things, I thought.
They can't.
Oh.
See, that's one thing people
Or
need to
they were gonna,
understand
I don't know,
is that
yeah.
the petitioners, they actually even said that they were going back to the people who signed the petition, getting them to sign another paper
Well,
to say.
that's only if the Millers thing was definitely gonna be jeopardized. They said they would withdraw it themselves.
Right. Now, the
But
thing is that,
yeah.
you know, even the person who wrote the petition cannot withdraw the petition.
It has to be other,
Well, there has to be 10 valid signatures to have the registered voters to be a valid petition. And I think if you had 20, I think if you had like, I don't know how many they had in the
Yeah.
signatures, but if, let's for example say if there were 26 valid signatures on it,
yeah.
you'd have to get 17 people to say we pull it, because
Okay.
then you reduce it to 9,
Right,
and then it's no longer live, right?
right.
At least that's been my interpretation. The truth is when you file it, you don't own it anymore, buddy. The city council owns it. You have thrown it into their court, and it's for them to adjudicate. It's that simple. And the council, it was pretty clear. There was a lot of property owner opposition, right? Possibly, I don't know.
Trade unions, and they
Right,
got all the workers
but the
out,
thing is that
yeah.
the way it works under state law, it requires a 6 out of 9 vote, 2/3 majority for zoning amendments.
If it'd gone to a second reading and all that.
Right,
Yeah.
so it would need 6 votes anyway.
Right.
It didn't have 6 votes.
No,
Furthermore, if you have more than, I believe it's 20% of the total property owners, ownership that would be affected, file letters of protest, then it becomes a super duper majority of 3/4.
I saw there were letters,
So,
did they
yeah,
get that?
I don't know that it
Well,
would
they
ever
certainly
get
would
calculated.
have if it had gone that far. They
I mean, I
probably
don't know,
would have
because
gotten
sometimes when you have something that's so broad
Yeah.
geographically,
that. Yeah,
then it's a hard thing to gather up enough property owners to reach the
20%,
20%.
that would be, yeah,
But if you get MIT and Harvard
yeah.
and Boston Properties and a few other, big
If it went
items,
by,
you might hit it pretty
square footage
quick.
versus ownership, maybe
It is on
different.
square footage.
Oh, well, then you probably
Yeah,
would get it,
yeah. So if this thing was going to require 7 votes anyway, honestly, I don't know
Six,
what
not
the
7.
heck they were
I
talking
thought it was
about last
6.
time.
You said 2/3.
But if you had enough protests, then it would have required a 7th
Oh,
vote.
wow, really?
They
had
don't
those
announce that
degrees.
until
Oh, wow.
it's
I
pretty
didn't
much
realize that.
time
So-
of ordination.
So it goes higher in terms of,
Yeah,
wow.
a much higher.
I mean, the main gist of it was that they wanted it to expire naturally because then it could be refiled. And if it wasn't, if it went the other way, they had 2-year
Right.
moratorium.
And I
Isn't
think-
that the big issue?
Yeah. So the thing is, under
Okay.
state law,
Yeah.
if a zoning petition receives negative action, and there's a variety of ways you can
Right.
be considered negative action,
Right,
then there's a prohibition against what you might call serial filings. You can't just, I'll just put it back in
would have
again.
to be drastically different from
Right,
the
yeah,
original
fundamentally
petition.
different,
Okay.
and then that's a little bit open to interpretation,
Sure.
I suppose, right? But now the thing is that if they said, oh, no, we're not going to file it, we'll take it back, we'll wait, right? But,
Yeah.
so then let it just not expire
Naturally.
naturally,
Yeah,
and then we'll wait, right? Well, the thing is, if you're the developers down in Cambridge Housing Authority, whatever.
again,
You're
it's that
basically saying it.
uncertainty.
You're
Yeah.
saying, "Oh, we're going to take your word for it."
Right,
Yeah, let me tell that to my lenders, right?
yeah,
So that was kind of the problem,
yeah, well,
Um,
it just wasn't, it wasn't concrete
right?
enough.
And as Mayor McGovern pointed out too, there were actually there's a nice long growing list of other projects that are kind of
Yeah.
anticipated that would be just as
Right.
affected by this,
But then,
including ones with
but then the
affordable housing.
counselors that were really wanted this to go through basically said, well, wait a minute, that could go on forever, there's always gonna be petitions and stuff, but I don't know. So
Yeah, I suppose you could make that case, but that was part
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
rhetoric last night. So anyway, the workaround, the way to basically do this, you had to sort of say you had to give negative action. I thought it was the right thing to do, but
Yeah.
the thing is that how do you actually do negative action when the matter is not up for vote?
So you had to first refer it back to committee, right?
Well,
All right,
no, you
can you
accept the
explain this in
report.
2.5 minutes?
So
Go ahead quickly.
you accept the report,
accept the report,
place on file,
Place on file.
and then the question is and then usually there's a third option, say, and pass to a second reading. Now, if you just didn't say anything, like you say, well, then it would just stay in committee.
Which is what they wanted.
Right, I think 4 of the councils
Yeah.
wanted to do that.
Yeah.
But the thing is that if you say, if you move to file, to pass to a second reading, then you force that to come to a vote. And if that,
Immediately.
and
Right.
if it cannot be passed to a second reading,
Then it's done.
then it's done.
And that's really where they had
and
to
it's
get to
done,
last night, right?
Right. So that's how they get to. So that's what happened. So there were.
How did they have to get a vote to get it to vote on a second reading?
Had Tim Toomey not made a motion to pass to a second reading, literally hoping the same would not prevail, in fact, then it would have just stayed in committee.
I see. So
Right.
a counselor can bring up the.
He made the motion.
He made the motion.
He made the motion, and there were 5 votes to say no to
Right.
that.
Right.
So it got negative action.
Yeah.
It's dead in the
Yeah.
water.
Yeah.
Right? Now some people are saying like, oh my gosh, my God, now we can't talk about it for 2 years. Well, that's crap.
There's the
this-
cities
this-
talking about
Envision Cambridge is
Yeah.
doing it. The Climate Action Group is doing it.
Yeah.
You know, there are all sorts of other things activities that are going on here within the community development department.
Yep.
This is not dead in the water. It's just that the petition is dead in the water.
Can someone else, not them, file something similar and still be counted as different?
I think that would be viewed as
Just trying to get around the.
trying to work around. Yeah. So I think the answer to that is no. I mean, you'd have to ask the city solicitor for sure, but I think the answer would be no. So I don't think this is a bad outcome. I mean, the thing
No.
is that
Got people's attention.
it got people's attention, and there was an order from the same counselor to me.
Yeah, that was a pretty good
to
order.
have the
Yeah.
mayor form a task force that basically is
really
going to
look
take
at all
all
of
of
these
the
issues. Right, what's
essential
doable, what
items
isn't,
here
yeah.
having to do with climate resiliency.
I thought that was a really nice
and
gesture.
and,
Yeah.
and then move on from
Yep.
there and just do it outside of the confines of this
Yes.
petition. It was a great move, actually.
Yeah,
so.
I thank goodness. I'm glad.
It wasn't the only thing that happened, so we'll talk about that
Yes.
in a few
See you in the
in another
next
minute
half.
or so here. All right.